Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name.
March Madness, Peggy.
And you are certainly mad.
You couldn't care less, could you?
Yeah, I could.
My teams have my once again my bracket was officially eliminated before I even hit submit.
I actually like to think of myself as being strength-based. So I think instead of saying I couldn't care less, this is what how I would reframe it. I would reframe it as I could care more.
It's 9:00 on the East Coast. I've had a long day. I don't need a headache before I go to bed. Can you submit? How about do me a favor and submit that one in writing, and I'll back to you, or I'll have someone else get back to you.
Yeah.
On that.
As long as it doesn't have, unless I include pictures, you won't read it anyway.
Anyways, you know what? I opened your book still has that new book smell when I open it. It's like being in high school. You know what is weird though? Today being March Madness, just fleeting moments, but this was a huge drinking day for me.
Wow.
We got into the wing place or wherever we were all meeting about 11 o'clock. Games came on at roughly noon. Mm-hmm. It was an all-day thing, and you have those. I still talk about euphoric recall because I don't remember. My brain doesn't offer up what happened on the drive home or that night when I got home and I couldn't do anything and I was worthless and people were ticked and how I felt in the morning. That I don't remember, but my brain still throws me these little flashes of, hey, remember when? The good times that we had. And not enough where it's just sort of a fleeting thought.
Yeah.
But I think that is normal. I mean, it's like totally. You're always going to remember an old friend or something before they turned on you and stabbed you in the back and all that good stuff. Well, who do we have on?
I have this sort of fantasy that, maybe we'll probably get a lot of hate mail, but the people I've, met in sobriety that I, like we're best friends. You do get those fleeting moments sometimes to go, man, I wish I could just experience one night with those people drinking, Well,
that's not a bad thing. That I had very good memories with alcohol, but alcohol and our relationship soured.
Yes.
For whatever reason. And it was time to move on, but it doesn't mean that, I don't hate everything that happened, that's where you get that, cognitive dissonance or whatever.
Wow, big word for you today. You learned that
word. It's the word of the month club. That came as a supplement.
So proud. Let me introduce her before she comes
Please
on.
Do.
Tonight, Jeff and I are super excited to have Suzanne Thistle tonight. I met her, I guess, through social media a while ago. We've been corresponding ever since. But Suzanne has a master's. She's a master licensed alcohol and drug counselor since 2005. She's been a clinical director and an executive director. She started out in a drug addiction prevention workshop for parents. She started out doing the addiction prevention workshop for parents in the 90s. She has been sober for 37 years. Woohoo! I should have brought my pom-poms out. She teaches about drugs at Plymouth State University since 2006, with the exception of a couple years. Suzanne's father is in recovery for over 40 years. Her daughter is in recovery for over 2. She lost her brother from alcohol and other drugs, destroying his body prematurely. Her niece died of an overdose, and her nephew got hit by a drunk driver and died after several months in a coma. And I love what she says. And yes, I am pretty sane with lots of therapy and support, LOL. So without further ado, I would love to introduce my friend and author, Suzanne Thistle. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Suzanne, I want to hear a little bit just your story, because I know you've had a rough run with alcohol misuse.
Right.
Just what Peggy said, but I would love you to mention at some point, your daughter's got 2 years of sobriety. She obviously knew you had an extended period longer. How did that I want to know, I'm curious how the conversations went, because I know your new book that we're going to talk about, which is Parents, Addicted Children and Hope. I want to hear about that. I've got a couple of questions, but that does the communication. I'm very curious about that. So hit on that, but take it away.
Yeah, sure. What's interesting is I was on a podcast yesterday yesterday or the day before. I'm so tired. I was in Greece for 2 weeks and I came back last Wednesday, and just the whole time change. I'm exhausted. I'm getting better, but then I came back and we did the spring ahead thing. So forgive me if I seem a little tired tonight too. I'm usually in bed right around.
I keep forgetting it's only 6 o'clock for me. So
I know you guys have it good out there.
no, he's on the East Coast.
I'm East.
Oh,
I'm East.
where are you? In Ohio?
Cincinnati, yeah.
Cincinnati, yeah. So you're not far from me. So a little history. I grew up in an alcoholic home. My dad was drinking, and of course, I was really young, and I didn't know how it was affecting me. He got sober when I was 16, and so I was already starting to drink and experiment with drugs, and what was cool is going from him. He worked a lot. There were a lot of us. I have 6 real 6-step and 3 half brothers and sisters.
Wow.
We didn't all live together at the same time, but so he was always working, and he did well. But when he got sober, he started like paying attention to us and stuff, because he started being around a little bit more. So it was interesting. There was turmoil with my parents getting divorced, and and him marrying my stepmother, who had 6 kids already. And my step brothers and sisters partied like us, so it really worked out well. We could share drugs and but anyways, in high school is when it got really bad. And when I was on the podcast yesterday, last night, I don't even remember. I think it was the day before. I started to talk, and I was like, really, I think my passion came from when I was in high school. My parents had no idea how to help someone. So my passion for this book, Parents, Addicted Children and Hope, I realized as I was talking, like, oh my gosh, it probably stemmed from there. I'm saying this as I'm on the book. I'm like, wow, this is weird. I'm just like having this epiphany.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was a full-blown alcoholic in high school, and
Wow.
and nobody knew then. I mean, now people know a little bit more, but nobody knew then how to, my parents didn't know. They didn't know that, maybe you should say something, maybe you should do an intervention, maybe you should do something. They were just waiting for me to come around, and what we know is that you don't have to do that. I think too many people think, well, when they want it, they'll get it, and that's a myth. There are plenty of things that people can do. It doesn't mean they'll get it,
Right.
But so anyways, I wound up really all through high school. That was like the worst time, and shortly after, I got sober when I was 24. So it wasn't long after high school that I stopped, because I was getting into trouble, and I felt like crap about myself. So anyways, plus my daughter was born. That's a long story, but I met a guy. This is so bad, I'll say it anyways. I met a guy at a bar. My friend liked him. I should have let him have her, but I wouldn't have my daughter. And I wound up getting pregnant that night and married him 3 months, 4 months later, something like that. It was ridiculous. On the way to the wedding, my dad said, you know, you don't have to do this. I'm like, well, my time for you to tell me. Why didn't you talk to me earlier? But in any event, the marriage did not last long. But I did get my daughter out of it. And then I started, of course, that was when I started realizing, you know, I'd always wanted to be a mother, but I wanted to be a good mother, and I couldn't do that. And so, so the guilt and the shame I couldn't get rid of with alcohol and drugs anymore. And so I wound up getting sober a year after she was born. And I call her my golden child because she kind of helped that process along. And so, anyways, you know, she's kind of grown through me. You know, I've grown with her and she's grown with me throughout our whole lives. She's, trying to think, she's 32 now. Does that make sense? I don't know, do the math. No, she's 36. I'm sorry.
I'm a social worker. I to do math.
Yeah, 36. Sorry. She just turned 36. That's how everyone's like, okay, I can remember now. 36. I should know. My son is 31. But anyways, trial and error, trial and error. I always used to say, I wish when you had a child that you just get this manual and it says, do this, do that, and this will be the outcome. And you can do the good stuff, and there's the outcome, right? For that particular child, because every child's different, right? So, anyways, I'm getting there, Jeff. You know, I got sober. Through a 12-step program. I continue to go to that today. I started reading everything I could. Like, why was I drinking like that? Why was I using drugs?
There wasn't much around then, was there?
There wasn't, but you know, some Ray Bradshaw, Wowitz, Claudia Black, you know, recovery stuff. I wound up going to the college that I teach at now. I got my undergrad there. My kids were little, and I got it in health education. So when I did reports, you know, I did them on alcoholism. I actually did one in my psychology class. I think it was alcohol on reservations.
Oh, cool.
The guy that was the professor gave me an A on it, and he wrote a letter of recommendation. I didn't even ask him to, you know. So it was kind of cool.
Very.
I still have it today.
Oh, that's really cool.
But anyways, so did a lot with that. And then as soon as I got done with that, I decided to go right in to get my master's. And believe it or not, ever since I was little, I wanted to write. I was writing poetry when I was like 8. My sister said some of it was dark and they were worried about me.
I bet.
Yeah. I don't remember it being dark, but anyways, a friend of mine and I were doing it together. And then I, you know, when I went to get my master's, the whole point of getting my master's was not to be a drug and alcohol counselor. It was to have the credentials to be able to write a book that people would read, because all the books I was reading, they either had a master's or a doctorate.
Right.
We know today, you know, I know today that that's not always needed. You know, if somebody does the research, you know, and they don't have a degree, they can still do a pretty good job. But at that time, that was on my mind. Okay, I'll go get this master's degree. But while I was doing it, I kind of liked it. And you know, so anyways, growth throughout, working on myself, doing therapy, you know, taking classes towards degrees that were helping me work on myself. And to get to the point after, my daughter and my son were growing up, I started to notice that she was drinking. And again, I didn't know as much as I do now, but I didn't stop talking to her. I mean, the two of them heard me talk about it on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
Because that was my job. That's what I did. And usually you talk about your job, right?
Right.
But whenever I could. And then when she started having kids, and 2 years ago when she got sober, I was starting to get nervous about the kids, and I had no problem speaking my mind. I usually don't. But the good part is that she was asking questions. She was asking questions about sobriety. She doesn't do a 12-step program, but she's involved in what's so cool is all of these Facebook pages and
Modern recovery is amazing.
oh my gosh, I'm looking at all, when I was in Greece, I was listening to her name is Laura, but I forget what her
Cowan?
It's a big recovery group for girls, women.
Oh.
It'll come to me. But anyways, we've had what's the coolest part is that when she decided to get sober, she was asking questions, what about this? And, whenever she runs into an issue, she'll talk about it, and now she has people that are in sobriety that she can talk about it too. And she has no problem. She has no problem sharing that she's sober, which is cool. And I give her a medallion every year for her.
Oh, that's really cool.
We order a special one for her. And now her husband's been sober a year and a half, I think.
Wow.
So yeah, they were drinking buddies. They've been together for almost 20 years, I think. So they've been together a long time. 36, yeah, a long time. So, but what was cool, you asked Jeff about the conversations with her, just very touching, very close, sincere, I had to know when to get close and when to move away, so that I wasn't being too pushy. Look, you can't drink, you can't,
No, it's a dance, right? Because you can't, you can lose them forever. So it's not, it's a very big dance. I mean, I have done that in my family where I thought I was going to go in and help, and that person's not talking to me and hasn't talked to me since. So although if I had to go back, I would still do it again. I mean, I would have done it differently, but it wasn't like I was evangelizing. I kind of got asked to get in there, but not saying anything and having something horrible happen, I couldn't live with myself, and I'll take that person not talking to me over her dying. So.
Right, and I've heard that over and over again. Well, I'm afraid they're not going to talk to me if I say something. But if you don't say something,
they won't talk to you forever.
They could die. I mean, I was thinking of my grandchildren. I mean, what if they're drinking and they're driving, and So, but yeah, it is a dance. It's a dance because I don't want you to hate me because I still want to see my grandchildren. It was quite an interesting situation. So,
well, how did the book come about? Go ahead, Jeff. I know you have some questions.
No. It was, as far as kids, Suzanne, my philosophy is, the more I think about this, is we treat it or we attack it when it's too late.
Yeah.
And my my interest or my thought that this could be something to explore is being, and I think you use the word proactive. I like the word preactive is what but it's being ahead of time. And
Right.
it's not, before, if our kids have a drinking issue, it's almost too late. I don't want to give my kids, teach them recovery. I want to get it. I want to keep them from having to even go through it.
Right.
And for me, that's the reasons maybe I drank or developed the problems, because everything I had I kept down in here, and it bottled up until I exploded. And the only way to put it out was to dump alcohol on it. That's the only way I put that fire out. And
Right.
if I had, I think communication, getting that started, and we talk about talking to our kids, and I think is talking to our kids what's important, or is it asking our kids questions? Is that what's important? Because when I'm talking to someone and they ask me questions, the voice I hear the most of is not what they're telling me. The voice I hear the most is my own,
Mm.
because that's where, by asking, I run from lectures when I'm being told, don't do that, son. You need to, you shouldn't. I'll smile and I'll go the other way, and I'll do my own thing. But if those questions are asked, how does it make you feel? If someone can get me to answer those questions, I that the most important part is hearing myself, but that's getting it out. So that's why the whole proactive, I love what you're doing, because I don't think it's a matter of teaching our kids recovery. I don't want to have to do that. I want to give them the tools. And I think that starts at a very early age with just doing things. This is a whole nother topic, but I see people dumping their kids in front of the TV, and I understand
Mm.
surgeons need to know how to do joysticks. They've got to learn that kind of stuff. That is the world we live in. But they also, doing stuff with mom in the kitchen, cooking, baking goods together, is a time when discussions will open up both ways. And for a son taking, going out and mowing the lawn, I don't know, whatever, a father and a son, those, teaching them how to communicate. And I always, I call it the Rose Rule from one of our friends, Rose Clark, but it's, I say the Rose Rule is to ask someone twice, because I'm the word that I said, my communication with my parents was the word fine. How was school today? Fine. How are you doing? Fine. It ended. Fine meant nothing. That just meant I don't want to talk about it. But if I ask someone, how are you doing today? Fine. No, really, Suzanne, how are you doing today? Well, even if the answer is still fine, that they have to think about it for a second. I'm okay. It's not bad. Well, then the door opens. You could say, well, why isn't today just a great day? And that's what teaching to. I would love for my kids, because I sure didn't do it, but to come home and go, God, I had a crappy day. This bitch named Peggy at school drives me da 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 da. Well, what's going on? What's going on? Tell me. Oh, I had the same similar. Now it's out, instead of staying in and stewing on it, where that builds up and drinks. So I love what you're saying about being, proactive, because I don't want to teach after it's happened. I want to teach my kid how to drive before they wreck the car, not after they wrecked it.
Yeah, I think the proactive too for me is parents that want to do something, and I use that word because if you don't want to do anything, this isn't the book for you. This is a book to help parents change the trajectory of someone's life, their child's life, the addicted child, because too many people put their hands up and, I can't do anything and have to wait until they're ready, blah, 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 all this stuff. But you'd be happy to know there's a whole chapter on prevention in this.
Yeah, tell me about that. What are your,
Well, as I was listening to you talk, I was thinking open-ended questions and
Absolutely.
yeah.
Right.
So don't ask them questions that are yes and no, because yeah, my son would have always said, I'm fine. Everything's yep. Well,
Yeah.
my daughter, but
What did you do today? What did you do at lunch? What did you
right.
do instead of how
Yes.
was?
Yes. Tell me a story, instead of yes or no, which is hard because, as a parent, sometimes you're under the gun, like, oh my God, how do I do this? What do I say? But I was thinking while you were talking too, starting early, you mentioned that. And boy, as soon as they're old enough to talk,
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely. You're teaching
yeah,
them how to do a narrative. And the thing is that in the United States, we suck at it.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
getting better, but we were so excited that our kids could name, do 300 sight words, but they couldn't express how they feel. I love practicing on my
right.
grandkids. I love it.
Me too.
Especially having two sets of twins, because twin studies are fascinating.
Oh,
But
wow.
when I see them, the other day, Sawyer, it's the fraternal twins, but Sawyer was just pissed off at her brother Jackson. And and I said, "Wow, Sawyer, you are really upset right now. Really,
That's good. That's good.
reflection, right?" And she
Yeah.
said, "No, Grandma, I just get so tired of Jackson being in my space. He needs to give me more space. But see how much narrative I get out of that.
Right.
Naming their feelings. If I'm wrong about their feelings, they will correct me. And then they go on to explain really what they were feeling. And I mean that all comes out of, social work, but
Right.
I'm always social work in my family. It's what I
There you
do.
go. I remember one of the therapists that I had said, wow, who did you have to talk to? Um, and my grandmother was
Mhm.
always there. She, I went to church with her. I did stuff with her. I stayed overnight, all of this stuff. So having a grandmother in your life is a plus for sure.
Or any important adult that thinks that
Yeah.
right? I had a Hazel, right? And I in my book, I talk about the fact that everyone should have a Hazel. Just that one person that thinks that you're
Yeah.
pretty special.
Yeah. My sister, she stayed on the Cape with my mother, and I came up here with my dad. And she talks about an older woman that she confided in and that was always there for her. And I met her at one point, but they were down there and we were up here. But yeah, having a great person. But I think when they're really little, I remember my son when he was 2 years old, he fell and he got hurt, and I said, "Oh, it's okay, it's all right." And it's not okay, it's not all right. Of course, I was sober a little bit longer with him. My daughter, I got sober, when she was first born. So, but my son, I was a little more sober. So I was like, yeah, you're right. It's not okay. It's not all right, but helping them, stand up for themselves
Mhm.
and, um, they should be allowed to say, no, I don't want that. They should have choices. And, there's so much, when they're young.
Yeah.
Um, and I think too, our public school system, I don't want to, criticize it too much, but
I live in California.
yeah. So I think, putting them in a line and having them go to each class and nobody really connecting like, the olden days where, the kids knew their teacher really well and there was good communication, good relationship. I think we're missing some of that. And you talked about this whole, thing. So many kids are their head down in their phone all the time. We're missing that human connection, I think. So,
Yeah. I
yeah,
took my grandkids last weekend to a new museum. They're 11 and 6, And they really they had a huge, not huge, about 20 minutes of adjustment time. They walked in. It was a real hands-on museum. It's the Sacramento Museum of Science and Curiosity, which I love that name. And I could tell right away that they're like, oh my God, there was kinetic sand and all, it was all a very Montessori like, setting. And it took them 20 minutes to just get out of their, electronic mode.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
They're like, oh, this is kind of boring. And then I couldn't get them to leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. They had to like move into that. What was your purpose for writing this book? And what was your favorite part about writing it?
Wow, those are good questions.
I'm a good questioner. I'm humble too. So.
I think
wait till you have a couple of bestsellers, Peggy, and then you can pop off.
I know.
No, I just think that my emotions are what I think move me.
Mm-hmm.
When I wrote Chem-Free Sobriety, I was totally pissed off because all the money, we were dealing with people dying all over the place.
Right.
And we couldn't get them in anywhere. We knew if somebody came in and we couldn't get them in somewhere, that they'll probably die. I hate to say that, but that's where we were at. And so, and then we started, all the money that was coming in was going towards MAT. I'm like, well,
what's MAT?
Oh, I'm sorry. Medication assisted treatment.
Oh.
So Suboxone, methadone. They're calling it something else now too, because I forget what they're calling it now. Medication assisted. Oh, I don't know. They change the words, all the time. But medication assisted treatment. So Suboxone, methadone, any kind of medication, but mostly Suboxone and methadone. And we're just like, whoa, wait a minute. It went from the pendulum swung from one side to the other. Instead of, we'll do abstinence and we'll do this. It just was medication. Millions and millions of dollars came into New Hampshire for that. And I'm sure it went everywhere. And so that's what pissed me off about that. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to write this. I'm going to write it now because I know hundreds of people just in New Hampshire that don't need medication to stay sober, and they've been sober for years.
Right.
So, see, I still get riled up because I know they're still pushing medication, and they're giving it, you're going to die if you don't take it kind of stuff.
That's a political thing too. So
yeah, there's a lot of
we can talk about that on another show.
Okay. But it's that emotional attachment,
right?
Because just, seeing all the mothers that were losing their kids, mothers and fathers, I should say. I'm just like, so the same kind of passion went into that, like seeing this happen, hearing from them. Every time I turn around, somebody's dying. And it's somebody's mother, somebody's brother, somebody's, sister, whatever. And so that's what moved me into that being the next book. I didn't want to see it anymore. And so I think, this is my humble opinion, that if a parent reads this book, and I have to say it, parents, addicted children, and hope, if they read this book, which is available on Amazon, they'll have a lot of tools. I jam-packed it full of resources. And Peggy, I actually used your quote at the beginning of the book. I think the part that they show on Amazon,
Really?
Yeah. Inside. But it also has people from all over the country. I've got somebody from United Kingdom I forget where other people were, but who, I started saying, who else besides treatment and support programs, who I interviewed, Australia, New Zealand, all over the United States, trying to think where else, international known places. I interviewed quite a few people, and all those interviews are in there with their information. But I also thought, well, who else could I get information from? And I thought, people that are in recovery who, what do they wish their parents knew?
I love that.
And so I've got quotes all through the book from people all over the place who give me a quick quote on what they wish their parents knew. They're pretty good. They're pretty good.
I can't wait to read it. I've kind of got your schedule. I've been teaching for a solid month, so I can't wait to.
My parents denied. My parents denied and hid their drinking.
Right.
And that taught me to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I hid it from my kids, but I'm not hiding my recovery. I'm not preaching to them. I'm trying to just show them that dad has smiles on his face and he's not drinking, so that if this is a path they are going to ever face or travel, I want them to go, you know what, at least I've got an experience with someone that has a smile on their face when doing it. So maybe this won't be what I think I feared that it was going to be.
They'll see that transformation like I did with my father when he got sober. I mean, he hugged me. He was loving and kind, and
wow. That just gives me shivers.
Yeah. But it didn't stop me. But I think if he had known what I know or what he knows now, he's 80 now, but I think it would have been different. He has no problem speaking his mind now. But
what did you tell him about your book?
I haven't told him a lot. I'm assuming he's reading it. He's down in Florida, so that's what happens in the East Coast here. Peggy, is when winter comes, everybody goes to Florida.
Those snowbirds, yeah.
So I know he's excited, and I'm sure he'll read it. I don't know when, but Jeff, I was wondering, how old are your kids?
32 to 26. I have 4.
You have 4. Yeah, my daughter has.
I've been sober for 3 years.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, and so I guess I'm thinking is that they see that transformation, so they knew Dad this way. Yeah.
It's interesting though, because I there was a few towards the end, but they saw Dad drink. They never saw Dad. I don't think they saw Dad drunk. That's how much I hid it.
Wow.
Which it was at the expense of time that I could have been spending with them. There was but that's the one thing that they've said is that they didn't have a bad childhood. They didn't. Wasn't an abusive. I actually was a fantastic dad. I coached everything I could with them. I was with them all the time. But I had a lot of the time I had a beer in my hand or a beer behind my back.
Wow. Yeah.
But again, they didn't see the negative. I hid it like crazy, and I never talked about it. So that was the whole thing. So there was no communication about it because I hid it.
I wonder if that's I don't know. I didn't hide it, but I wonder, my husband's in recovery. He's been sober 20 years. And he talks about how he hid it. He would get up.
My family had, and I think they believe me now, but when I tell them how much beer I consumed every day, I think they still don't believe me. They're starting to, but they had no idea.
Yeah, yeah. I've had people say to me, "Oh, you weren't that bad, and you should be able
Yeah.
to have a drink."
I was
And
passed out in my garage, and my friend said to me, "You know, you're a social worker. I can't believe the job that you have, and you know that you're fine."
Yeah, I had
I would drink too.
they saw me having my first beer and had no idea it was my 12th.
Oh yeah, that was me too. What's we have to close, but what's one thing that we didn't ask you tonight that you'd love the listeners to know about you?
About me?
Yes.
I love what I do. I love my life right now. I think that boy, it's just I go with what comes to my mind, right? If you want what we have, do what we do. And one of the things I had to do is I had to get help. I couldn't do it myself.
Yeah, we
And
can't. We cannot do this thing alone.
It's too much. It's too hard doing it all by yourself.
Well, because we think we're the only ones going through it if we do it that way.
Right, right.
So,
And there's so many Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn even, there's lots of people talking about their sobriety on LinkedIn. Every time I get on my Facebook page, I'm like constantly, congratulations, congratulations, congratulations. There's so many people getting sober and staying sober and celebrating anniversaries, and it's so great. I wanted to say too about parent book. I have a whole chapter in there on interventions and
awesome.
Information on interventions. Some really great people out there doing interventions, sober supports. What else? What else? What else? How to cope. How to cope. And in the prevention, it doesn't just talk about what you can do as a parent for intervention. It also talks about what you can do in schools, what you can do in your community.
Love it.
And other ways and being active, or sharing with the school. Look at, do you have this? And I actually say that, if your school doesn't have this, ask them to put it in. And but anyways, me, I love life. I love sobriety. I can't even imagine ever drinking or using again. I continue to get support on a regular basis. Like I said, I still belong to a 12-step program. And I continue to stay associated with people who are sober and want to live a sober life. And it's real easy now. It's so easy now with all these programs out there. So anybody can do it. If I can freaking do it, anybody can do it.
I really believe that.
Yeah.
So people go out, get on Amazon, order Parents, Addicted Children, and Hope. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne.
It's been a joy talking to you. We'll have you on again. Thanks.
Thank you. All right.
Have a great night, everyone. Take care.